There are moments that split your life into before and after, not with thunder or spectacle but with the quiet weight of a choice you didn't plan to make. For one man driving home through a February blizzard, that moment came under a street lamp where something small and still lay curled against the frozen pavement. He would later say he almost didn't stop, but something about the way the snow had begun to cover it, gently like a burial, made him pull over. The wind cut through his jacket as he stepped out of the truck. The cold snap had been brutal that week, the kind that made the evening news and kept people indoors. Temperatures had plunged well below zero, and the streets were empty except for the swirling white and the hum of a single streetlight overhead. He crouched down, his breath fogging in the air, and reached toward what he assumed was a stray kitten, maybe abandoned, maybe too young to find shelter. But when his gloved hand touched the small body, he froze. The markings were wrong. The ears, tufted and pointed, were wrong, and the paws, even tucked beneath the tiny frame, were too large, too wild. This wasn't a kitten. It was a bobcat, a baby, no more than a few weeks old, its spotted coat dusted with ice crystals, its breathing so shallow he had to lean close just to see the faint rise and fall of its ribs. He didn't think. He didn't call anyone. He just pulled off his coat, wrapped the limp creature inside, and ran back to the truck. The drive home was a blur of heater vents and whispered reassurances he wasn't sure the animal could even hear. His mind raced. Wildlife rescue, emergency vet, frostbite protocol, but beneath all that was a single insistent thought: don't let it die. Not tonight. Inside his house, the warmth hit like a wall. He cleared the coffee table with one sweep of his arm, laid the bobcat down on a towel, and began the slow, meticulous work of bringing it back from the edge. Heating pad set to low, warm water bottles wrapped in cloth. He moved carefully, checking for frostbite on the ears and paws, gently massaging circulation back into the tiny limbs. The bobcat didn't move, didn't open its eyes, just lay there, fragile and impossibly small. He told himself it was temporary. One night, maybe two, just long enough to stabilize it. Then he'd call a wildlife center in the morning. They'd know what to do. They'd have the resources, the expertise. He was just a man with a spare bedroom and a microwave meal he'd forgotten to eat. But as the hours stretched past midnight, something shifted. He found himself talking to the bobcat. Low, steady words about nothing in particular. About the storm outside. About how tough it was, making it this far. About how it just needed to hold on a little longer. And slowly, impossibly, the bobcat's breathing deepened. He didn't notice Milo at first. His cat, a gray tabby with white socks and a skeptical disposition, had been watching from the hallway for the better part of an hour. Milo was not a social cat. He tolerated affection on his own terms, avoided strangers, and had once spent 3 days hiding under the bed when a neighbor's dog visited. The man had assumed Milo would stay far away from whatever strange wild thing had invaded his territory. But when he looked up from adjusting the heating pad, there was Milo, sitting just a few feet away, ears forward, eyes locked on the bobcat. "Hey buddy," the man said softly. "It's okay, just keeping him warm." Milo didn't move, didn't hiss, didn't puff up or retreat. He just watched. And then, with a slow, deliberate grace, Milo stood and walked closer. The man's breath caught. He started to reach out, ready to scoop Milo away if this went wrong, if instinct took over, if fear turned to aggression. But Milo didn't strike. He didn't growl. He lowered his head, sniffed the bobcat's frozen ears. And then, gently, impossibly gently, began to lick them. Long, careful strokes. The same grooming motion he used on himself, over and over, warming the icy fur, smoothing down the tufted tips. The man sat back on his heels, stunned into silence. He'd read about animals doing strange things in extreme circumstances, about dogs nursing kittens, about crows befriending cats. But this was different. This was Milo, his aloof, particular, boundary-obsessed cat, choosing to care for a wild predator that in any other context should have triggered every alarm bell in his evolutionary brain. Milo settled down beside the bobcat, curling his body in a protective crescent, his purr a low, steady rumble in the quiet room. The man stayed there on the floor, watching them both, as the storm howled outside, and the night stretched on. He didn't sleep, He couldn't, not with the weight of what he was seeing, the impossible tenderness of it. And somewhere in those dark, quiet hours, question began to form, one that would follow him through every decision to come. Why would a domestic cat instantly adopt a wild predator that should have terrified him? By the time the first gray light of dawn crept through the windows, the bobcat's breathing had steadied, its paws twitched, and Milo, still wrapped around it like a living blanket, opened one eye and looked up at the man as if to say, "He's ours now." The man didn't argue. Morning came with unexpected silence. The man woke on the couch, stiff-necked and disoriented, and for a moment couldn't remember why he'd slept there. Then he saw them, still on the coffee table, exactly where he'd left them. Milo was curled tightly around the bobcat, his chin resting on the wild kitten's back, his body a living furnace, and the bobcat was breathing, really breathing. Its tiny rib cage rose and fell in steady rhythm, and when the man leaned closer, he could see its paws twitching in what looked like a dream. He'd meant to call the wildlife center that morning, had the number pulled up on his phone, but when he reached for it, Milo opened one eye and gave him a look that said clearly, "Not yet." So he didn't call. Over the next few days something extraordinary unfolded. Milo became the bobcat's shadow, his protector, his teacher. When the bobcat cried, soft, chirping mews that sounded nothing like a house cat, Milo would rush over, meowing loudly as if translating the complaint. When it tried to stand on wobbling legs, Milo walked alongside it, steadying it with gentle headbutts. He brought toys to its makeshift bed, a crinkled ball, a worn catnip mouse, and dropped them carefully within reach. The man tried, once, to separate them for safety. He'd placed the bobcat in a crate with fresh bedding, thinking Milo might need a break. Within 10 minutes Milo was pawing frantically at the door, yowling in a way the man had never heard before. The moment he opened it, Milo dove inside, and curled around the bobcat again, purring so loudly it vibrated the plastic walls. After that the man stopped trying. The bobcat healed fast. Within a week it was eating solid food, small pieces of chicken. Milo supervised closely, as if quality checking every bite. It learned to walk steadily, then to pounce, launching itself at shadows and furniture legs with surprising precision. Milo taught it the slow blink, the head bump greeting, the art of the strategic nap in a sunbeam. But the wild never left. The bobcat climbed places Milo never would. Curtain rods, bookshelves, the top of the refrigerator. Its eyes tracked movement with an intensity that was pure predator. And when it played, there was power behind it, a strength that grew more obvious every day. Still, Milo never flinched, never backed down. He trusted this wild creature completely, and watching them together, one domestic, one feral, both impossibly devoted, the man began to realize something he hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't temporary anymore. Something beautiful and complicated was unfolding in his living room, and he had no idea how it would end. 3 weeks passed, and the bobcat transformed. Its legs lengthened, its paws grew heavy and thick-padded, the spotted coat deepened in color, and when it stretched, the man could see muscle moving beneath the fur, lean coiled strength that had no place in a living room. The playful pounces became harder, faster. When it wrestled with Milo now, there was real force behind it, enough to send the older cat tumbling. But Milo never stopped trusting. Even when the bobcat pinned him, even when those wild eyes locked onto him with predatory focus, Milo would simply slow blink and groom the bobcat's ears until the intensity passed. It was as if Milo understood something the man was only beginning to grasp. The bobcat was both things at once, wild and gentle, fierce and loyal. Still, the man knew this couldn't last. He called the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center on a Tuesday morning, his hand shaking slightly as he dialed. The woman on the phone was kind but direct. The bobcat was healthy, strong, old enough now to begin transitioning back to its natural habitat. They had protocols for this: soft releases, monitored territory, gradual independence. "It's the right thing," she said gently. "He deserves to be wild." The man thanked her and hung up. Then he sat on the floor and watched Milo groom the bobcat's face, and wondered how you explain deserves to a cat who'd given everything to save a life. He built an enclosure in the backyard, large, sturdy, filled with platforms and hiding spots. A halfway point, a test. The bobcat explored it fearlessly, leaping between levels, stalking insects in the grass, climbing to the highest perch to scan the tree line beyond. It was breathtaking to watch. The way it moved, the way it seemed to come alive in a way the house had never allowed. But every evening, without fail, the bobcat would press against the glass door, nose to the pane, eyes searching the windows for Milo, and Milo would be there, on the other side, paw raised, meowing softly. The man sat on the porch one night, watching them through the glass, and felt his chest tighten. Returning the bobcat to the wild was the right thing. He knew that. The responsible thing. The humane thing. But it would break Milo's heart, and maybe if he was honest, it would break his too. The stronger the bobcat became, the harder the choice grew, until the day came when he could no longer avoid it. Spring was here, and with it, the time to let go. The morning of the release was warm and clear. The wildlife team arrived at dawn, with carriers and paperwork and calm, professional voices. They explained the process, supervised release into protected territory, trail cameras for monitoring, follow-up visits. The man nodded, signed forms and tried not to look at Milo, who sat in the hallway watching everything with silent, knowing eyes. He walked the enclosure one last time, with both of them. Milo moved slowly, pressing close to the bobcat's side. The bobcat nuzzled them both, the man's hand, Milo's face, with a gentleness that felt like goodbye. Then the wildlife staff opened the gate to the forest, and the bobcat paused at the threshold, looked back once, and walked into the trees. The man stood there long after the team left, staring at the empty enclosure, feeling the weight of doing the right thing. The house felt wrong without him. Milo wandered the rooms crying softly, checking the enclosure, the coffee table, every spot the bobcat had slept. He stopped eating, stopped playing, just curled in the sunbeam where they used to nap together, and stared at nothing. The man wondered, late at night, if he'd made a terrible mistake. 3 weeks passed. Then one morning, reviewing footage from the trail camera he'd mounted at the forest edge, the man froze. There, in grainy nighttime video, stood the bobcat, bigger now, healthy and strong, coat gleaming in the infrared light. He was watching the house, just standing there at the tree line, utterly still, and in the audio feed, barely audible beneath the wind, 2 soft sounds, the bobcat's low chirp, and Milo's answering cry from the porch. The man's hands shook as he rewound it, played it again. They were calling to each other. That evening he opened the back door. Milo stepped onto the porch, ears forward, and from the shadows at the forest edge, the bobcat emerged. Not all the way, not into the yard, but close enough for Milo to walk to the grass, close enough for them to touch noses, just once, in the fading light. Then the bobcat turned and slipped back into the wild. But he returned, every few weeks, always at dusk, always just to the edge. The man watched them through the window, these 2 impossible friends, and understood finally what the bond had always been: not ownership, not domestication, just love, in its wildest, truest form. He stayed only one night, but he left a bond that lasted a lifetime.